Hey guys, tonight we're gliding into a tale that smells faintly of crushed grapes and sea air. You're in a warm grove somewhere between myth and memory, where the cicadas hum like sleepy radiators and the sky wears a faded purple robe. The earth is dry under your feet, but not unpleasantly so, like a freshly baked loaf just pulled from the oven. Ahead, there's someone walking now, wandering through the vineyard. His step wobbles, his smile is too wide, and his hair looks like it's been arguing with the wind for the past few hours. He's whistling a tune that feels old enough to predate language itself, and despite his tousled look, he radiates something. Regale, you blink. Did the vines just bow toward him? That's your hint, by the way. You're about to spend some time with Dionysus. And yes, he's already had a few dots. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from some tucked away corner of the world, post your location and local time in the comments area. Love knowing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trail behind the young man, who is now balancing precariously on a low stone wall, arms out like a tightrope walker. He hums louder. You're pretty sure the birds have stopped chirping just to listen. He doesn't seem dangerous, just odd, a little too delighted with everything. The way he pets the olive tree like an old friend, or the way his bare feet leave no prints in the dust. And he's alone, too alone, for someone dressed like he wandered off stage from a toga-themed banquet. You wander along, past quiet hills and the sleepy chatter of a nearby village. The smell of crushed figs, sweat, and something deeply fermented hangs in the warm air. You almost miss it how he glances sideways, flicks his wrist, and a grapevine suddenly coils up the trunk of a tree like it's auditioning for a play. Blink. The tree didn't have vines a moment ago. You keep walking, eventually. He stumbles upon the coastline, where a tiny port dozes under the Mediterranean sun. A few fishing boats bob lazily in the water, tied to weathered wooden posts. And this is where things begin to shift, not abruptly, but like the way dusk seeps into afternoon. You spot a group of sailors lounging by their ship, their attention snapping to the figure approaching the docks. They exchange glances. There's a certain glitter in their eyes now, not curiosity, but calculation. The man is clearly rich. His tunic gleams like spun wine, and even his sandals look embroidered. To the pirates, he must look like easy money. A nobleman, drunk and wandering without a guard. That's a one-way ticket to ransom paradise. But to you, well, you've seen the vines. And then there's his smile. It hasn't wavered once. If anything, it's grown sharper. Historians still argue whether Dionysus looked youthful and soft-featured, or if that was just how he chose to appear. In most ancient pottery, he's drawn like a dreamy teenager, wine cup in hand, often lounging while the world burns. Around him, some even say he was androgynous, on purpose to unsettle, to confuse, to float just outside the norms of man and God alike. What's certain is that this wasn't his first. Wine-soaked Stroland, it wouldn't be his last. A pirate calls out, and the stranger waves with all the unbothered grace of someone who's never had to carry a wallet. One thing leads to another, and soon the young man is being offered passage aboard the ship. Their smiles are wide. His is wider. You might think, well, maybe they're just being nice. But then one of them quietly pulls rope from beneath the deck. Yeah, that kind of nice. You step closer, just to hear. There's talk of selling him to slavers, or ransoming him to rich relatives. One even suggests just pushing him overboard after they're far enough from shore. It's not the kind of plan that tends to end with a group vacation to Mykonos now. Here's a fringe tidbit for you. Some versions of this myth say the pirates were from Tyrrhenian area that overlaps with parts of modern Italy. This led some 19th century scholars to argue that the story was a metaphor for early Greek colonists pushing back against Etruscan raiders. Or maybe it was just Dionysus being bored. Both seem equally plausible, to be honest. So here you are, standing on the shore, watching this soft-spoken, rosy-cheeked man get ushered aboard a ship by a crew that smells like bad decisions and dried squid. You want to shout a warning, but the way Dionysus calmly steps aboard, whistling that same eerie tune, it's like he's seen the next chapter already. And maybe he has. He lets them tie his wrists. He sits politely. He even thanks them for the hospitality. One of the pirates jokes that he hopes the boy knows how to swim. Another says they'll be rich by sundown. You lean on a crate of olives and squint into the golden water. A breeze picks up. The sea smells sharper. Now's like salt, more like ... wine. You shake your head. That's impossible, isn't it? The ship creaks as it pulls away from the dock, cutting a lazy path across the shimmering blue water. You feel the tug of the current beneath your feet, the sort that suggests the ocean knows something is about to happen. You steady yourself, keeping close to the railing. The sun is high overhead, and the only sound for a moment is the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull and the occasional squawk of a curious gull. The pirates are in good spirits. One of them starts singing a sea shanty, slightly off-key, but no one seems to care. Another is rummaging through the stranger's belongings. Though belongings might be generous, all he really brought was a wineskin, a thin gold belt, and a half-eaten fig. Not exactly ransom material. Still, they laugh, convinced he must be hiding a fortune somewhere, perhaps sewn into the folds of that annoyingly spotless tunic dot. Meanwhile, the young man, the one we already suspect, is no ordinary hitchhiker, lounging like he's in a spa, bound at the wrists, but completely at ease. His eyes drift from pirate to pirate with a dreamy half-smile, as if he's picking out songs for a party playlist. Every so often, he hums that same melody, the one that sounds like it's always on the edge of turning into a thunderstorm. Then, without warning, the rigging creaks twice. You look up. The sails are full, but the wind has died down. Odd. The air is unnervingly still. Then you hear it. A faint rustle, not from canvas or rope, but something softer, more alive. The first vine snakes out from under the deck. It curls up the mast slowly, like it's stretching after a long nap. No one notices at first. The singing continues. The rummaging escalates. But then another vine emerges. This one thicker, speckled with tiny, budding grapes. It wraps around a barrel tight enough to crack the wood. A third vine slithers across the floorboards, licking toward the stranger's feet like a pet greeting its owner. One of the pirates finally looks down and freezes. What in Hades is this? Now the others notice vines. Everywhere the mast is blooming, lush with purple grapes. The oars are tangled in greenery. The rudder groans under the pressure of coiling ivy. The whole ship is becoming a floating vineyard, and in the center of it all sits the boy, eyes half-lidded, smiling like this is exactly what he wanted. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Ancient Greeks didn't just associate Dionysus with wine. They believed wine itself was a form of transformation. It turned peasants into philosophers, grief into joy, restraint into frenzy. Wine was not just a drink. It was a small act of divinity. So a ship overtaken by vines. Not just a special Ephetus theology. By now, panic has crept in. One pirate draws a dagger and moves toward the stranger. Bad call. The moment the blade gleams in sunlight, the stranger tilts his head, and the wind-dark sea begins to shimmer strangely around the hull dot. Then it happens. The man breathes in and exhales not air, but mist. It spills across the deck like spilled ink, thick and damp, curling around ankles. You blink, and the air smells like a cellar in late autumn, dark, earthy, almost ... fermented. The dagger-wielding pirate freezes. His eyes widen. There's a low, guttural growl not from the stranger, but from somewhere within the mist. A shape is forming. Not fast, but definitely not human. Fur, jaws, claws, and eyes like burning coals. The lion steps out of the haze. It yawns. You really want to believe this is an illusion, that it's smoke and mirrors and too much sun. But the lion moves like it has weight. Its breath steams in the air. One paw crushes a goblet someone dropped. The pirates scream. Now for a fringe tidbit in one rare vase painting. The creature Dionysus summons isn't a lion, but a bear, possibly an older regional variation, which begs the question, did different Greek city-states imagine different terrors based on their local wildlife? Historians still argue whether the Greeks adapted their myths for maximum relatability, or if they just liked creative storytelling over consistency. But back to the ship. Chaos reigns. Two pirates jump overboard without thinking. One tries to climb the mast, only to be caught by a vine that jerks him back down. Another tries to row, but the oars are now blooming with roses. The lion, meanwhile, casually strolls across the deck, tail flicking. It doesn't even attack, just exists, which seems terrifying enough. The stranger is no longer pretending. He stands, ropes falling away like ribbons. His eyes glow faintly gold now. He stretches arms overhead and yawns. Again, Lee, this time, the sky itself seems to shudder. "Are we having fun yet?" he asks, though maybe you only think he says it. His mouth never moves. The remaining pirates fall to their knees. Some pray, others just sob, and the vines, they begin to retreat, curling back into themselves like a scene in reverse. The grapes burst, staining the deck with deep purple splashes. The mist lifts, the lion vanishes, but the sea has plans of its own. The men who jumped are thrashing, screaming, but they're not drowning. Not exactly. You lean over the edge and watch as their legs twist, lengthen, fuse. Their feet flatten into fins. Their arms shrink. Their mouths stretch forward into beaks. Their skin glistens silver in the sun, and then they vanish below the waves. You stare at the water, smooth again. Silent, a moment later, a dolphin leaps from the waves. Then another, and another. They spin, they chirp, they dive again. You want to think it's just a coincidence, but one of them, just one, looks directly at you and winks. The dolphins vanish beneath the waves, but you stand there, gripping the ship's railing, your knuckles pale. The sea is calm again, unnervingly so. The breeze returns, whispering softly through the sails, now sagging like deflated lungs. The scent of grapes still lingers, sickly sweet and persistent, as if the ship itself had soaked in a barrel of wine. Behind you, the stranger stretches his arms as if finishing a mild morning workout. His wrists are still slightly red where the ropes had bitten into his skin, but he doesn't seem to notice or care. He turns toward Euond, the two remaining pirates, still clinging to consciousness, and gives a lazy, lopsided smile. "Too much?" he asks. You don't answer, mostly because your tongue feels like it's made of sawdust. The two surviving pirates scramble to their knees. One tries to crawl away, forgetting that they're on a ship. The other manages to stammer something that sounds like a prayer, or maybe a recipe. Neither seems eager to make eye contact now. Here's a delightful historical tidbit. The ancient Greeks believed dolphins were sacred to Dionysus after this very transformation. And honestly, it's not a bad deal. 1 minute you're a sweaty, hungover pirate, and the next you're performing synchronized jumps in the Ionian Sea with your new pod brothers. Win-win, kind of. The man now, the god now, because there's no hiding it anymore. Walks to the edge of the ship. His gaze sweeps the water as if checking his work. Then he claps his hands once, and a faint shimmer runs across the surface like oil spreading on a puddle. The dolphins leap again, this time in rhythm, one after another, like dancers rehearsing a final bow. You can't help but watch. It's hypnotic, strange, but beautiful. He looks back at you, eyes clearer now, less golden, more human, still unsettling. "You're still here," he says. "Interesting." You shrug. What else can you do? You're on a ship with a wine god who casually unmakes reality and treats it like performance art. One of the pirates tries to stand, but the god gestures absent-mindedly, and a grapevine springs up from the deck and wraps gently around the man's ankle. Not enough to hurt, just enough. Dionysus paces slowly across the planks, bare feet making almost no sound. He hums again that same tune from earlier. You'll realize it hasn't left your head since this all began. It's sticky, circular, strangely familiar. The kind of melody you'd expect to find carved into the wall of an abandoned temple, with the words "do not sing aloud" scrawled underneath. You follow him a few cautious steps behind. The god stops midship, where the sun pools in warm gold and the sails flap like lazy wings. He kneels and touches the deck gently. The vines retract fully, vanishing into the wood as if they were never there. The ship groans, then steadies. A moment, it looks like nothing ever happened. Just an ordinary merchant vessel, drifting peacefully. Except the pirates are gone, or transformed. And the god is now inspecting a knot in the wood like it's a rare painting. Historians still argue whether the dolphin transformation was meant to be a punishment or a reward. Some scholars think Dionysus offered Mercy a chance to live joyfully in the sea rather than face the wrath of an angry god. Others argue it was mockery, eternal life as a smiling sea creature, forced to leap and laugh forever as a symbol of your own foolishness. Either way, no one really got a choice. Dionysus, finally, stands again and faces you directly. You're wondering why I let you stay. You are. Very much so. Simple, he says. You didn't tie the rope. Ah, fair enough. He walks to the bow and leans on the rail, staring out over the endless blue. You follow at a respectful distance. The dolphins are gone now, submerged, by in the depths or off to perform their next divine ballet. The wind returns, the sails tighten. The ship slowly adjusts its heading as if guided by an unseen hand. You can't help yourself. So, now what? He chuckles. Now we sail. To where? You don't ask. You're not sure the answer would make sense anyway. Here's a curious fringe detail. One rarely told version of the myth claims that after turning the pirates into dolphins, Dionysus used the ship to sail directly to Naxos, where he would later meet the abandoned Ariadne. Yes, that Ariadne, the one Theseus ditched after she helped him kill the Minotaur. Turns out, even wine gods have a romantic side, and a surprisingly solid rebound game. But for now, the ship just floats. The god hums, and you sit cross-legged near the bow, trying to process what just happened. The sea is gentle again. The sky slowly melts toward orange. There's a quiet between you, now not awkward, but thoughtful, like you're both just letting the breeze do the talking. Occasionally, he glances your way, then back toward the horizon, as if waiting for something, or maybe remembering Dot, because for all his swagger and chaos, Dionysus carries a strange loneliness, too, that thing all gods carry. The weight of being eternal in a world that isn't. The ship creaks, the sails whisper, and you somehow begin to relax. Even after pirates turned into dolphins, even after the vines, even after the lion, you close your eyes for a moment and breathe deep. Salt, grape, wind would not. A bad way to sail into sleep. The ocean stretches endlessly around you, a vast and shimmering blanket stitched together by sunlight and wind. The waves no longer slap, but sigh, like they've grown sleepy after all the morning's excitement. The air has taken on that lazy warmth of late afternoon ripe, quiet, just a bit too comfortable, peeling against the railing, eyelids heavy, wondering what other absurd surprises this journey has planned. Dionysus stands at the wheel now. He hums occasionally, fingers drumming against the wood, steering not by compass, but seemingly by whim. You're not entirely sure he knows where you're headed or if he cares. His hair flutters slightly in the breeze, those curls too perfect to be mortal. The kind of hair that probably repels sea salt and attracts compliments wherever he goes. Every so often, he speaks not directly to you, but more to the air, or maybe the ship itself. She's behaving today, he murmurs, better than last time. Last time, she tried to tip the amphory overboard. You nod slowly, not sure if she refers to the ship or the sea, or perhaps a disgruntled ex. Still, it's hard not to be curious. You've been through the transformation of pirates, the growing of vines, and the appearance of a casually majestic lion. But beneath the glittering surface of it all, something lingers, something old, perhaps older than the god himself. You decide to test the waters. Why dolphins? He grins. Because jellyfish are terrible conversationalists. Fair. Then he softens. No, really. Dolphins are clever, joyful, and they know when to disappear. Good qualities. Especially for idiots who tried to sell me. You raise a brow. So it was a punishment, he shrugs, or a blessing. Depends on your perspective. You've never felt water like that around your skin. You should try it sometime. He glances overboard, eyes twinkling with mischief. You float well, I bet. You take a cautious step back. Here's your historical grounding for the night. The ancient Greeks believed dolphins were omens of good fortune, especially for sailors. Spotting one meant the gods were watching, possibly protecting, possibly judging. Either way, better than spotting a kraken. The ship begins to slow, not from any mechanical reason, but because the sea itself has stilled. The waves pause like they're holding their breath. Even the gulls seem to vanish. You glance around. The silence somehow louder than before. That's when you see it, an island. It rises out of the sea, like a secret too tired to stay hidden. Cliffs bring its edges like jagged teeth, but beyond that, the land smooths into terraces of green. Vines grow wild there too, climbing ancient stones, curling around toppled statue. There's no dock, just a stretch of soft beach, pale and sunlit, like someone set the brightness too high. Dionysus watches your face and nods. Naxos, he says. You blink. The Naxos, the only one worth crashing a party for. He guides the ship closer, and it somehow obeys without anchor or oars. It just glides forward, parting the water like a whispered secret. Now for a lesser-known tidbit. Though Naxos was a real place, one of the Cycladic islands, it was also imagined as a kind of divine resort in myth. A place where gods could unwind, where madness could be softened by moonlight and wine. Think of it as Olympus' beach house. The ship shudders gently against the sand. Dionysus doesn't wait for a gangplank. He leaps lightly onto the beach, sandals barely sinking into the powdery white. He turns, offering you a hand. You hesitate. He chuckles. You made it this far. Might as well enjoy the snacks. You take his hand, and it's warm. Not glowing, not magical, just real. And that's somehow the strangest part. The beach smells like thyme and sea foam. The sand is warm beneath your feet, almost therapeutic. You follow Dionysus through a narrow path between rocks, vines brushing your arms, until the trail opens into a clearing. And then party, but not a noisy, crowded party. No disco ball, no booming music. This is a mythic party. Eternal, slow, strange. Nymphs dance barefoot through the trees, their laughter light and sharp as wind chimes. A satyr leans against a tree trunk, playing a flute carved from bone. A jug borne floats lazily through the air, refilling goblets that never empty. A large feline creature, possibly the same lion from the ship naps under a fig tree, purring like a content furnace. No one notices you, or maybe they do, but they don't care. You're part of the background now, just another thread in the dream. Dionysus strides into the middle and flops onto a couch woven from grapevines and silken cloth. He picks up a goblet, takes a sip, then holds it out toward you. Taste, he says. You do. And it's not wine, not really. It's memory, it's music. It's the exact feeling of laughing so hard your ribs ache, mixed with the comfort of falling asleep during a thunderstorm. You sink to the grass. The nymphs keep dancing. The satyr plays on. Somewhere a bird sings a note that could fracture glass or mend a broken heart, and you let go. You realize now, this isn't just a party. It's a pause, a divine intermission, a still point in the wild spin of myth and chaos. Historians still argue whether the gods used places like Naxos to escape their duties, or to remind mortals that even the divine needs softness. You close your eyes, just for a moment, just long enough to forget you were ever on a ship, just long enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, you've earned this moment of quiet joy. You lie back against the grass, and it's softer than any bed you've ever known, and warm, with the gentle scent of crushed herbs rising around you. Sunlight flickers through the canopy above in golden shards, and somewhere nearby, laughter ripples like a brook skipping over stones. There's no pressure here, no urgency. Just the eternal present. Dionysus sprawled elegantly across his grapevine. Couch raises his goblet to no one in particular. It looks thoroughly at home, like a man who built the world just to nap in it. You feel it yet. He calls out lazily, one eye barely open. You turn your head and blink at him. Feel what? He grins. The pause, the lull. This, he gestures at the air like he's plucking dust motes, is the bit between stories. The exhale before the next wild things. You suppose you do feel it, the way everything has slowed, as though the island exists in a different rhythm entirely. The satyr still plays that lilting tune, looped like a lullaby. The wine still floats. The dancers spin with lazy grace. No one seems to age, peer, or worry, or leave. Here's a historical curveball for you. While Dionysus is now often typecast as the party godwine, revelry, bad decisions, early Greek cults saw him as a deeply mysterious figure. He represented not just intoxication, but transformation, rebirth, the thin line between madness and insight. His festivals, like the Dionysia, weren't just drunken revels. They were sacred rites meant to unmake the self, to dissolve identity in favor of communion with the divine. And here, on Naxos, you finally begin to understand what that meant. A nymph passes you a handful of figs, bursting with juice, still warm from the sun. Another drops a wreath of laurel lazily into your lap, not with reverence, but with the casual generosity of someone who has infinite time and no reason to hoard beauty. You smile, and they smile back. No words needed. Still, a question bubbles inside you. Something untouched, something real. Will we leave? Dionysus opens both eyes now. He sits up slightly and studies you. Leave, he echoes. Why would you want to? You're not sure. But the thought of the ship, the sea, the world beyond, it's creeping back like an itch you can't reach. He stands, stretches, then walks toward you. His steps are slow, deliberate. He kneels beside you, and for a moment, all the divine glow is gone. He just looks, thoughtful. Here's the truth, he says softly. Most mortals don't want to leave. They say they do, but when the vines curl around them, when the air sings, when the pain stops, they settle in. You swallow hard, so they stay. He smiles faintly. Most forever, but not all. He tilts his head. Not all. Some remember things. A mother's voice, a lover's love, the feel of snow, the crunch of olives before they ripen. Little things that tug them back. You think of your own life, now oddly distant. Did you leave anyone behind? Or did you simply vanish, like the pirates into the sea? Historians still debate whether Dionysus was a liberator or a captor. Was his gift of wine meant to free us from suffering or trap us in illusion? Some cults saw him as salvation. Others feared him as madness incarnate. Perhaps both were true. Dionysus rises again, brushing grass from his tunic. He looks toward the trees, where the dancers have started to fade, becoming silhouettes in the golden light. The satyr's tune slows. The island feels thinner somehow, as though you're approaching an edge. Come, the god says gently. You follow. The path winds again, but not back to the beach. This time, it leads upward toward the cliffs. The trees thin and the sky widens. The breeze returns, cooler now, tinged with salt and dusk dot at the top. The view opens, endless ocean, glimmering with late sunlight. And there far below the ship, still waiting, sails furled, bobbing slightly in place like it never moved at all. Why is it still there, you ask? Because it always waits, Dionysus replies. That's the trick. You can always return to the world. But the question is, do you want to? You stand at the edge. The rocks beneath your feet are warm. The sky above you is soft and lavender. The ship looks so small now, distant, real. Can I come back here? You ask. He doesn't answer, just smiles, not cruelly, not kindly, just knowingly. Another fringe detail for your sleepy brain. The myth of Dionysus and the pirates wasn't just about punishment or wonder, it was a metaphor for change. For the line you cross when you experience something that reshapes you forever. You don't become a dolphin, necessarily, but you do stop being who you were. The god steps beside you. If you stay too long, you'll forget the way back. You nod slowly. You know he reaches into his sleeve and pulls out something stranger. Small fig leaf, perfectly green, impossibly fresh. He presses it into your palm. For the journey, he says. You don't ask what it does. You don't need to. The feel of it in your hand is grounding, like something tethering you to the world you almost forgot below. The ship bobs once more. Dionysus turns and begins walking back down the path, humming again. No goodbyes, no farewells. Gods rarely explain themselves. You look out one last time, then begin your descent. The path down from the cliffs feels different this time, less like a trail and more like a descent through layers of waking. Each step peels back some of the dreamlike softness that had coated everything on the island. The air sharpens a little. The colors deepen. Even the scent of the figs fades into the salt-heavy wind. The ship waits exactly where it was, unmoved, as if the hours you spent on the island never happened. The gangplank is down now, though you're fairly certain it wasn't before. You don't question it. Questions seem too heavy for this moment. You board slowly, one hand still curled around the fig leaf in your palm. It's grown warm from your grip, though you don't remember clenching your fist. As soon as both feet touch the wooden deck, the ship shudders slightly, and then movement. No sails catch wind. No oars dip into water. It just begins to drift away, sliding silently from the sand, like a thought leaving a mind. You glance over your shoulder, half expecting Dionysus to appear one last time. But the beach is empty now. The vines have receded. The clearing is gone. Even the laughter has vanished. Naxos shrinks behind you, its cliffs dissolving into haze, like a memory already slipping beyond reach. The ship moves faster now. The water darkens. The sky grows heavy with twilight, the edges of the world blurring into cool indigo and quiet grays. A breeze hums low across the deck, and you wrap your arms around yourself, suddenly unsure if you're cold or just hollowed out from everything. Here's your mainstream history fix. The ancient Greeks believed dolphins carried souls to the afterlife, not just symbols of joy, but literal guides between worlds. Some tombs even feature carvings of them, sleek and leaping, ferrying the dead on their final swim. You remember the pirates, how they disappeared without a splash, how the sea seemed to welcome them. Maybe it wasn't punishment after all. Maybe it was a crossing. The sea beneath you begins to bubble. No, not just bubble. Churn. You grip the railing instinctively. The fig leaf is gone from your palm. Then dash ripples. Then dash shapes. Dozens of them. Sleek and silver, circling the ship like dancers in formation. Their backs arc gracefully through the water. And every so often, one leaps just enough to catch a bit of moonlight before slicing silently back into the sea. Dolphins. You lean over the side, heart skipping for no good reason. One of them swims closer, almost too close, and for just a second, its eyes meet yours, and there's something there. Recognition, maybe, memory. You blink, and it's gone. The dolphin disappears beneath the surface, joining the others in a fluid spiral around the ship. They never touch it, but they never stray too far either. You're not sure if they're guarding you or warning you. A splash behind you. S-P-I-N. A new figure stands at the helm. It's not Dionysus. Not exactly. It's a woman, no dark, hair braided with vines, skin like olive bark, eyes too bright to belong to any human. She tilts her head at you, expression unreadable, and then just like that she becomes Dionysus again. Same smirk, same curls, same wine-stained tunic, god of many faces, he says casually, plucking a lyre from thin air and strumming a few idle chords. You didn't think I'd stick to just one form, did you? You blink, was that Ariadne? He winks, or a dream. Depends on your wines. Here's a quirky tidbit for your drowsy brain. In some versions of the myth, Dionysus finds Ariadne on Naxos after she's been abandoned by Theseus. He marries her, makes her immortal, and places her wedding crown among the stars as a constellation. In others, she dies, or never existed. Myth is like that, a little drunk, a little poetic, rarely consistent. Dionysus strums again, and the ship starts to spin, not fast, but slowly, gently, like the lazy swirl of a leaf in water. The dolphins adjust their orbit to match, never breaking rhythm. You feel it now, not fear, not excitement, just motion, movement, without destination, like being between dreams. Where are we going? You ask. He shrugs. You think I plan these things? Please. I'm chaos wrapped in a toga. The stars emerge above, scattered like spilled flour across the sky. One of them twinkles brighter than the rest, steadier, warmer. You wonder if it's her crown. You wonder if it's real. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was born once or twice, whether his mother was a mortal Semele or an earlier earth goddess lost to time. Some claim he descended into the underworld and came back changed. Others say he was born fully divine, He is, in every version, a figure of transformation. And you're changing to Dot, not in the dolphin sense, but something in your posture has shifted. You lean into the night now. You stop asking when you'll arrive. You realize you already have Dot. The ship slows again, not from tide or wind, but from intention. It drifts beside a strange shape rising from the sea. An amphora, yes, a wine jar, just bobbing there like a forgotten buoy. Dionysus lights up. Ah, my missing jug. I knew it would turn up eventually. He leans over and plucks it from the water like a floating apple. It's sealed with wax, heavy with age, yet no water has entered it. He pops the lid and sniffs. Still good. He offers it to you. You hesitate. Will it turn me into something? He laughs. Only into yourself. The best version or the worst depends on the sip you drink. It tastes like the sea dot and then stars. The stars blink slowly above you, as if the sky itself is trying to stay awake just long enough to finish one last bedtime story. The sip of wine lingers on your tongue, not sweet, not bitter, but ancient. It tastes like stone cellars and sun-ripened grapes, like the inside of an old myth left open too long. You feel it swirl down through your chest, leaving warmth in places you didn't know were cold. The ship no longer moves. It simply floats in a vast bowl of silver light, surrounded by a quietness so complete it feels musical. Dionysus stands at the helm again, though you're starting to think the ship doesn't actually need steering. He taps a finger on the amphora, like it's a drum, keeping time with something only he can hear. You ever wonder why I chose dolphins? He asks casually. You glance over the railing. A few of them are still circling slowly now, languid and unbothered. One lazily rolls onto its back, mid-swim, as if showing off. I thought it was punishment, you say. He chuckles. Mortals always assume that turn into a beast must be a curse. But dolphins, they're clever, curious, free. You consider this. So it was a reward. Let's call it a course correction, he says, tossing the cork back into the amphora. They were going the wrong way. I gave them fins. Here's your historical moment of clarity. In ancient Greek culture, dolphins were sacred, seriously sacred. Killing one was said to bring a death sentence from the gods. They symbolized salvation, guidance, even reincarnation. Sailors who fell overboard often prayed for a dolphinopt, a god to save them. They were myths little, lifeguards, wearing permanent smiles. The dolphins dive deeper now, as if returning to some secret place you can't see. Dionysus watches them go, then turns to you. "Wanna hear what really happened?" he asks. You raise an eyebrow, as opposed to the embellished version. He nods. This one's not in the poems, not in the amphora paintings, not even in those dusty little scrolls the philosophers pretend they don't read for gossip. You settle in arms folded on the rail. Go on. Dionysus leans against the mast and lowers his voice to a near whisper. The pirates didn't mean to capture me. Not really. They were just drunk and cocky and figured I was another lost rich kid. They tied me up sure, but not tight. One of them even offered me water. Another tried to steal my belt, but that's because it was embroidered with gold lions. I mean, who wouldn't try? You stifle a smile. So I sat there, tied and waiting, while they argued over what to do with me. Sell me, ransom. Toss me overboard and split my sandals as souvenirs. And you didn't stop them. Oh, I could have. One snap of the fingers, and they'd be snails on a salt flat. But I wanted to see. I wanted to know what they'd choose. He pauses. One guy, the youngest, wanted to let me go. He said I looked too calm, like someone who knew things. He had these sea glass eyes, bright as the Aegean. The others mocked him, of course, called him soft, but he just stared at me like I was a riddle. You sit with that a moment. What happened to him? Dionysus smiles faintly. He dove off the boat before it changed, swam away before the vines grew or the sails caught fire. Smart boy. Might have ended up in a temple somewhere, or a vineyard. And the others? He gestures toward the sea, where a distant splash breaks the surface. Still swimming. Historians still argue whether the myth of Dionysus and the pirates originated in Phocaea or Crete. Some even claim it was borrowed from older Phoenician legends about shape-shifting gods, testing mortals. No one can agree on whether it was meant as a warning or a parable. Maybe both, maybe neither. You let the silence wash over you again. Somewhere a gull cries, though you see no land. The ship creaks gently. You realize you haven't felt the pull of the fig leaf in your hand for a while now. It's either vanished or melted into your skin. Same thing, really. Do you forgive them? You ask. The pirates. You nod. He considers. Depends what you mean by forgive. I didn't destroy them. I just helped them change course. That sounds like mercy or irony. He shrugs. But hey, everyone deserves one good transformation. He spins the amphora gently on the deck. It hums faintly as it turns, like something hollow filled with old music. Then he says something odd. You ready to jump? Your breath catches jump. He nods toward the rail. That's how this ends. Not a destination, a decision. You peer over the edge. The water gleams like a liquid mirror, smooth and silver. It doesn't feel cold, doesn't even feel wet, just inviting. Will I become a dolphin? You ask. He grins. No, but you might remember what it's like to be free. Another fringe detail. Ancient Greek initiates of Dionysian mystery cults often underwent ritual baptisms. Not symbolic, real. A dunk in the ocean or a sacred spring meant to wash away who you were and let you emerge slightly more divine. No one wrote down the exact effects, probably because the wine had kicked in by then, but the point was clear. You had to surrender before you could return. You look at Dionysus one more time. Will I see you again? He gives a small shrug, almost sheepish. Depends. Do you plan to get lost again? You laugh. You didn't mean to, but it bursts out anyway, and the tension breaks like a rope going slack. You step up on the edge of the deck. You breathe in deep, and you dive. You plunge into the sea, and everything disappears. Noise, light, the concept of up or down. For a moment, you're not swimming. You're suspended, cradled, held by something ancient and vast and indifferent. The water wraps around you like silk soaked in memory. You don't panic. There's nothing to panic about. You feel ... rewritten. Your body doesn't fight. It doesn't flail. You just drift, arms outstretched, eyes wide open. Beneath you, the sea blooms with color. Not bright choral colors, no. More like dream colors. Deep teals, whale gray shadows. Faint flickers of gold that might be schools of fish or stars drowned too slowly. Then the dolphins return. They circle you again. Slower this time, reverent. One glides just inches from your side, its slick skin catching the dim light like wet marble. Its eye meets yours again, dear. Sure of it this time, it sees you. Not the outline of your body, not the swimmer lost at sea. You dot it, lets out a single high-pitched click, and the sound travels through your bones like a whisper, with a secret tucked inside. Not a word, not even a message, just a sense of being known. The pod begins to rise, breaking the surface one by one. Sleek backs slicing the moonlit water like quills, writing something invisible. You follow, slowly, naturally, as if your limbs have always known how to move like this. You burst above the surface and suck in air sharp, salted, real. But something's changed. The sky seems bigger, the stars closer. Your body lighter, like the sea took away something heavy you'd been carrying and forgot to name. A nearby dolphin leaps, and you laugh without meaning to. It's that kind of moment. Here's a mainstream fact to anchor you. The Greeks believed Dionysus was the only Olympian who could free mortals from their earthly suffering. Not through war or justice or thunderbolts, but through ecstasy, through release. His wine, his dances, his madness, they weren't just pleasures, they were doors. And if you were lucky, were lost enough, he'd let you step through. The dolphins begin to swim toward a shape in the distance. You follow, of course you do. At first, it looks like a mirage, a glowing patch on the water. But as you approach, the shape solidifies, a floating island. Not land, not exactly. More like a garden carved from a dream. Vines trail over its edges into the sea like lazy arms. Trees bend under the weight of golden fruit. The air buzzes with something not sound, not scent, just presence. You pull yourself onto its shore, which isn't sand but velvet moss, cool and green. The dolphins vanish behind you, slipping beneath the surface like ink dropped into water. Dionysus is waiting. Of course he is, lounging under a fig tree, legs crossed, wine cup in one hand and a plum in the other. You made it, he says. Didn't sprout gills, always a good sign. You glance around. What is this place? Temporary, he says. Like everything. But you can rest here. No storms, no questions. Just fruit and time. You sink into the moss beside him, every muscle in your body humming with slow, grateful fatigue. He holds out the plum. You'll want this. You hesitate. Is this another test? He shakes his head. This one's just dessert. You bite into it. The juice runs down your chin and stains your fingers. It tastes like something that remembers sunshine. Historians still argue, he says lazily, whether my followers were mad or enlightened, whether the ecstatic rites were acts of liberation or chaos. But I say, what's the difference? You smile. Wasn't your cult banned? He shrugs. All the best parties are. Here's your quirky tidbit of the night. Dionysian festivals often involved women menads running into the mountains, tearing apart animals with their bare hands, and dancing until sunrise. Buttoned. Here's the twist. There's archaeological evidence suggesting many of those savage orgies were peaceful picnics with tambourines and goat masks. The truth, as always, somewhere between moral panic and misunderstood metaphor. You lie back in the moss. The sky above spins gently. Or maybe it's you. Hard to say. Dionysus begins humming. Not a song you recognize, but one that makes you feel like you're being rocked in the arms of something older than language. The trees rustle in a wind you don't feel. The fruit glows. Somewhere nearby, a goat bleats, and you're not sure if it's real or just symbolic. You ever miss being mortal? You ask without thinking. Dionysus raises an eyebrow. Who said I ever was? You blink, or, he adds with a wink, maybe I'm still faking it. The plum pit rolls from your fingers and sinks into the moss. Instantly, a tiny shoot sprouts, green and trembling, eager to grow. You watch in silence as it begins to rise. You made that happen, he says. You shake your head. No, that was the plum. He grins. Same thing. And then, very gently, the garden begins to dissolve, not vanish, just ... blur, like a painting smudging at the edges. Dionysus doesn't seem surprised. He tosses his wine cup into the vines, stands and brushes invisible dust from his tunic. Looks like it's time. You blink again, but it's hard to keep your eyes open. The trees fade. The moss softens further. The stars above blur into streaks. Wait, you murmur. Where do I go now? He leans down, his voice barely audible now. Wherever the story takes you next. You close your eyes. Your eyes open slowly, not because you will them to, but because light finds them first. Not harsh sunlight, no. This light is filtered, gentle, as if the sky itself has had a long night and is choosing to speak softly. You're lying on something firm but forgiving, and above you is a canopy of leaves swaying like curtains, breathing in rhythm. There is birdsong, not the insistent kind, but that dreamy question mark warbling that seems more like conversation than music. You're not on the floating island anymore. You sit up slowly. You're in a grove, not quite a forest too open, but not a field either. Trees circle you like tall, patient guards, their trunks draped in ivy and thyme. A narrow path snakes between them, lined with crushed lavender and something that smells faintly of time. You take a few steps. The earth is warm under your feet, not scorching, just informed, like it remembers the weight of every footfall before yours. You spot a figure ahead. At first, you think it's Dionysus again, but no, this one stands straighter, wears a tunic with no embroidery, carries a lyre dot. It's Orpheus, or maybe a dream of him. He doesn't speak, just plucks one string. A single note floats out, clear and aching, and that's when you realize this grove is for echoes. Every story leaves one, and yours has joined the others. Here's your historical anchor for this section. In ancient Greece, groves were sacred spaces, temples without walls. Certain groves were dedicated to specific gods, and some were believed to whisper truths to those who knew how to listen. Pilgrims left offerings, not on altars, but in the roots of old trees, fruit, coins, strands of hair. You wonder what you've left behind as you follow the path deeper. The world hums, not in sound, but in presence. Even the insects seem thoughtful here. The air is thick with pause. Eventually, the grove opens onto a low hill. From here, you see a village nestled in the distance. Simple homes, smoke rising from chimneys, people moving between market stalls, their movements unhurried. You blink. The village seems familiar, unreasonably so. Like a detail in a childhood dream you only now recall. You can almost name it. You descend the hill, and the scene sharpens. There's a woman carrying a basket of figs, a boy chasing a chicken, an old man arguing with a tree stump, though, to be fair, the stump is winning. The moment your foot touches the cobblestone street, the village responds. A soft bell chimes. Somewhere a rooster crows, even though it's clearly the middle of the day. The smells wrap around you: baking bread, citrus, olive oil, all the comfortable domestic chaos of mortal life. You walk through it slowly. No one stares, but everyone sees you. They nod, smile. One child offers you a plum, just like the one Dionysus handed you. It's a nice detail. You pocket it. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some lesser-known Dionysian cult practices, initiates were taught to re-enter society after ecstatic rites by engaging in ritualized ordinary tasks: baking, sweeping, storytelling. The idea wasn't to escape the world, but to rejoin it with fresh eyes. A resacralizing of the mundane. You enter the village square. There's a fountain in the middle, not grand, but clean. A sculpture of a dolphin sits atop it, water gently pouring from its open mouth. A man is sketching nearby, charcoal on clay tablet. He's trying to capture the curve of the dolphin's back, but it keeps coming out like a fish. He groans in frustration. You crouch beside him. Try drawing the tail first. He glances at you, surprised, but tries it. His brow furrows. He presses harder, and then his expression shifts. Recognition. He can see it now. Thanks, he says, and offers the charcoal to you. You smile, but wave it off. You're not here to draw. Historians still argue whether Dionysus' myth is primarily one of punishment or protection, a voice says nearby. But most forget he was also the god of theater. Every story he touched became the stage you turn. Dionysus again, of course, but he's different now, simpler. No golden crown, no vines or goblets, just a man with tired eyes and dusty sandals. You raise an eyebrow, you again. He grins. You thought I'd leave before curtain call. The two of you sit on the edge of the fountain. He watches the water fall from the dolphin's mouth. You've been through the sea, the vines, the madness. Now comes the hardest part. You wait. Normal life, he says. You laugh. That's the hard part. He nods. Ecstasy is easy. It burns quick and leaves you glowing. But walking back into the market and remembering to buy lentils, that takes real magic. You sit with that a while. A leaf floats past. The baker across the square drops a tray of loaves and curses softly. A dog chases its own tail with comedic devotion. Everything feels ... warm. You'll forget this, Dionysus, says ... You frown. What? He shrugs. Bits of it. That's how these things work. The dolphins, the vines, even me. It'll fade like smoke, like wine. You swallow. So what's the point? He taps your chest gently, once. You'll remember in here. And sometimes that's enough. You look around once more. The village, the fountain, the fruit, the hill. A breeze stirs the dust at your feet, and the light begins to shift again. The sun dips lower, casting long amber shadows across the village square. The warm stones under your feet feel like they've absorbed centuries of footsteps. People rushing, resting, forgetting, remembering. You sit quietly by the fountain, listening to the faint trickle of water from the dolphin's mouth, watching as a soft breeze sets the hanging fig leaves trembling. It feels like the end of something, but not a sad one. Just quiet. Dionysus stands slowly and stretches with a theatrical groan. All right, he says, brushing imaginary dust off his tunic. I'm off to go be worshipped in some overly dramatic poem or misinterpreted ritual. You going to be all right here? You nod. You don't know what here really means anymore. But yes, you will be all right. He gives a half salute. Don't forget to walk the long way home. There's a tortoise that likes to sunbathe near the olive grove, worth the detour. And with that, he turns and walks off, not into a temple or a forest, or even a swirl of mystical mistbutt just around the corner of a bakery, whistling a tune that doesn't quite stay in your memory. That's how gods leave, you suppose. Not with a bang, but with a wink. You rise and begin walking the cobbled path out of the square. Your limbs feel rested now, but heavier too, like the kind of fatigue you earn not, the kind you suffer. People pass you, carrying baskets or leading donkeys, or arguing gently about the price of grapes. One man has a rooster under his arm, and it looks incredibly judgmental. Here's your grounded historical nugget. The Greeks believed in xenia, or hospitality, a deeply sacred duty to treat strangers as honored guests, for any traveler might be a god in disguise. This cultural belief stitched divine possibility into everyday encounters. And yes, even that one time you offered your only crust of bread to someone who later turned into an owl. That was probably appreciated. You stop at a small stall selling honey cakes. The woman behind the table smiles with deep, genuine warmth. "One for the road?" she asks. You nod. She hands it to you, wrapped in a fig leaf. "On the house," she adds. "You've got that look." You raise an eyebrow. "What look?" She chuckles. "The kind of look people get when they've been turned into a dolphin and back." You freeze for a beat, and she winks. Kidding, probably. You take a bite as you continue walking. The cake is warm and soft, spiced with cinnamon and just a hint of orange. It melts on your tongue. Somewhere behind you, a goat bleats in disapproval, because goats are like that. Soon the path leaves the village and begins winding up a hill. The stones give way to dust. The noise of the market fades, and a hush descends, the kind that only ever exists in late afternoon on a quiet path in the middle of nowhere and everywhere. At once, a soft rustling ahead catches your attention. You pause, expecting maybe a rabbit or a breeze. Instead, a group of women steps onto the path from the trees, wrapped in flowing cloth that shimmers like dusk. Their eyes are bright, their steps synchronized. You recognize the Maenads, followers of Dionysus, the ones who, depending on the story, either tore wild animals limb from limb or sang lullabies to the moon. They don't speak. They simply nod, their expressions serene. One offers you a wreath made of ivy and grape leaves, and you bow your head to accept it. They vanish into the trees as suddenly as they appeared. You continue walking, a scholarly mystery to ponder. Historians still argue whether Dionysian rituals were literal or symbolic. Were the Maenads frenzied killers or poetic metaphors? Were the rites divine ecstasy or early performance art? The archaeological evidence is fragmented. The surviving texts are contradictory. And maybe that's the point Dionysus never wanted. A simple narrative. You crest the hill. The full landscape rolls out before you. Valleys dipped in shadow. Mountains holding on to the last gold of day. In the far distance, the shimmer of the sea. You stop and breathe it in. All of it. The salt on the air. The cicadas starting their evening choir. The scent of crushed thyme underfoot. You lie down in the tall grass. It cradles you gently. The wreath on your head smells faintly of wine and dust. Above you, the sky turns a deeper blue, and the first stars enchanting, blinking. You think about those pirates, the ones who laughed at the wrong boy, the ones who ended up sliding through waves with smooth skin and no voices. Were they punished or gifted? Were they erased or transformed? Maybe both, maybe neither. You close your eyes. The earth is warm beneath you. The sky is soft above, and somewhere, just at the edge of hearing, you think you hear a dolphin call echo across the sea. You smile. The grass shifts softly beneath. You, as a hush settles over the landscape, that unique kind of hush that only exists between twilight and true night. You lie still, your hands resting on your stomach, fingers absent-mindedly tracing the curve of your ivy wreath. The air has cooled, but not uncomfortably so. It feels like a silk sheet laid gently across your skin. You open your eyes again, drawn by the deepening blue of the sky. Stars now pepper the heavens freely, no longer shy. The constellations begin to assert themselves like old friends slipping, prop into the room at just the right moment. Above you, you spot a familiar shape, a cluster of stars forming the Dolphins in Delphinus. The Greeks told stories of dolphins that rescued poets, carried lost sailors, and even ferried gods like Apollo himself across oceans. You smile. Seems dolphins were more than just punishments. They were messengers to Dot as you sit up slowly. The sound of nighttime returns, alls stirring in the trees. A cricket warming up its legs like a fiddle player. There's something grounding about the way the world resets every evening, as if forgiving the chaos of the day. You rise, brushing bits of grass from your clothes. The hill slopes down ahead into a moonlit grove, and you walk toward it slowly, your feet padding against the earth with a hush of their own. With each step, the world seems to grow quieter around you, not empty, just distilled. Focused Dot, here's single quotes, is your historical tidbit for the night. Ancient Greek mystery religions, particularly the Eleusinian and Dionysian rites, often emphasized this balance between noise and silence. Ritual began in frenzy dancing, music shouting, but always ended in quiet reflection. Silence wasn't emptiness, it was sacred, a sign that the divine had passed through and left its echo. Dot. As you descend into the grove, you spot an old stone circle, weathered, moss-covered, and half-sunken into the earth. Not large, just a dozen stones, arranged in a spiral around a single, flat-topped boulder. You step inside and sit on the central stone, and then you wait. You don't know what for, but it comes a breeze first, then a scent-crushed pomegranate, distant myrrh. And then, like a cloak thrown over your shoulders, a vision forms behind your eyes. You're no longer in the grove, or maybe you are, but time has spun backward. The stones are fresh, newly placed. Torches line the circle. Maenads sway in time to unseen music, their eyes half closed. A priest, cloaked in white with vines embroidered in silver, raises his arms and chants something lost to modern ears. The wind moves in rhythm with him. Then silence, and from that silence, laughter. Not cruel, not wild, just amused. You turn. Your head, there he is again. Dionysus. But now he is neither the boy on the beach, nor the king with the golden cup. He is everything in between, youth and age, ferocity and calm, vine and root. He sits beside you on the central stone, as if he's always been there. He doesn't speak, neither do you, and yet somehow you understand. This isn't about punishment or reward. It's about transformation, about how every person, every story, every quiet sigh in the dark becomes something new when it meets the divine. That's the legacy of Dionysus. Not just wine and madness, but change. You blink, dot. The vision fades. You're alone in the stone circle again. The night is deeper now, and the stars have shifted overhead. Somewhere in the distance, an animal cries out, not in pain, just in greeting. The world goes on. Here's your fringe tidbit for this chapter. Some ancient cults believed that Dionysus had a hidden, true form that was so overwhelming that to see it would cause instant madness or enlightenment, depending on who you ask. The human mind wasn't meant to perceive gods fully, so they showed you masks, symbols, wreaths, and dolphins. You leave the circle slowly, the feeling of his presence lingering like the last sip of strong wine. As you return to the main path, the moon hangs low behind you. The village is just aglow on the horizon now, and ahead lies a winding descent into silence. You're different now. No outward mark, no flashy sign, but you feel it in your bones. The kind of shift that doesn't announce itself, but that stays with you forever. The road beneath your feet is old and uneven, but somehow that makes each step feel more real. Like you're not just walking back, you're returning. The moonlight slips between the trees like melted silver as you follow the winding road down from the hill. The stones under your feet, still warm from the day, cradle your footsteps gently, like they know how far you've come. You're not in a rush. You couldn't be, even if you tried. The world has softened around you, like parchment curling at the edges under candlelight dot down below. The olive trees rustle like old men murmuring in their sleep. Their leaves catch the moonlight, flashing silver as the wind combs through them. Lazily you glance up once more at the stars. Delphinus is still there, and beside it, Orion, lounging like he's heard this story a dozen times, and always approves of the ending. You pause by a small stone bench, tucked beside the road. By, it's tilted, one leg sinking into the earth, as if trying to return to the soil. You sit for a moment, exhaling deeply. The silence here is not empty, it's thick, full, like a jar of honey. You could scoop it up and pour it over bread if, you had any. You close your eyes, not to sleep, not yet, just to remember that boat, the laughter, the shift beneath your feet when the ship sprouted ivy and the mast bled wines. The dolphins slicing through the waves where men once shouted, the sound of flutes without musicians. Sometimes it feels like remembering someone else's dream. And maybe it was, or maybe it's yours now. Historically speaking, just to keep the academic part of your brain satisfied, the tale of Dionysus turning pirates into dolphins dates back to Homeric hymns, those ancient poetic compositions honoring the gods. They were sung before feasts, before sacrifices, or just to entertain in an age before TV remotes and existential scrolling. But what's peculiar is how often this story survived. Unlike other myth fragments lost to time, this tale stayed afloat like its dolphins be, 'cause it tapped into something primal, transformation, justice, a cheeky twist of fate. You lean back, your head resting against the gnarled bark of an olive tree behind the bench. It smells like time itself, bitter and old and enduring. You run your fingers along the grooves in the stone, trying to read history through texture. Suddenly, a quiet hum drifts up the road. You sit up, ears straining. There it is again, a soft, rhythmic humming, low and steady. Not a voice, not quite. More like the sound of a very lazy bumblebee that's forgotten how wings work. You stand and turn toward it. Curious dot around the bend, you find the source. A shepherd, older than the hills. Probably. He's sitting under a fig tree with a lyre balanced. On his knees, strumming a melody that refuses to commit to any key. His dog is asleep at his feet, tail twitching in a dream. You sit beside him without a word. He plays. You listen. He doesn't ask your name, doesn't tell you his. The music fills in the silence like steam rising from warm bread. He finally glances over. You've seen him, haven't you? He asks, his voice like gravel coated in honey dot. You nod. Always leaves folks looking a little glassy. He mutters, plucking a single string that hangs in the air like the last drop of rain. You get used to it. You want to ask how many times he's seen Dionysus, but he's already standing, dusting off his knees with a groan. Careful on the road, he says. Not everything strange is dangerous, but not everything familiar is safe either. He whistles for his dog, who wakes instantly, stretches dramatically, and trots after him as they disappear into the fig shadows. You sit a little longer, absorbing the weight of his words. A scholarly question worth noting. Historians still debate whether stories like Dionysus and the pirates were moral warnings or just divine prank tales. Were they lessons for impiety or just reminders that the gods had a sense of humor, more chaotic than comforting? Scholars pore over pottery fragments and lyric poems like detectives solving divine cold cases. But in the end, the gods never cared about consistency. Eventually, you rise again. The road waits, patient, like always. You walk on. The village lights have gone dim now, torches extinguished, windows shuttered, dreams drifting through clay walls and open rooftops. You pass a fountain, the same one where you began this strange, dreamy journey. The dolphin statue winks in the dark, its marble eye-catching a starlight glint. You lean over and let your fingers skim the surface of the water. It's cool and still. A frog watches you. Suspiciously, you wave. It does not wave back. Classic frog behavior. You make your way to your little house at the edge of the village. The door creaks, the floor sighs, and the walls smell like dried herbs and rain-soaked stone. You kick off your sandals, the dust of gods and myths left behind in messy little footprints, and then, finally, you lie down. Your body welcomes the mattress like it's reuniting with a long-lost friend. The ceiling above you flickers with the light of a single oil lamp, casting shadows that dance slowly, like sleepy dolphins riding slow waves. Your eyes close before you tell them to. The world grows quiet, and deep within the stillness, you hear a distant splash. Not thunderous, not scary. Just one last echo of a story that, for tonight at least, belongs to you. Sleep doesn't come right away, but that's okay. You lie in the stillness, wrapped in the afterglow of myth and moonlight, toes curled under a woven blanket that smells faintly of time and smoke. The night outside hums like a lullaby, insects ticking like clocks in the distance, and the leaves whispering stories they can't quite finish. Your breathing slows, falling in rhythm with the steady creak of the old wooden beams above you. But even though your body begins to rest, your mind drifts elsewhere, still walking, still wandering, as if the journey isn't done. You find yourself back on the sea, on that ship that's no longer a ship. The timbers pulse with grapevines now, and the sails flap like heavy leaves in a drunken breeze. The ocean glows purple beneath you, kissed by twilight and echoing with the laughter of dolphins. You're not alone. Other dreamers drift here too. Maybe they've heard the same story, or maybe there's rhymes with yours in some forgotten dialect of fate. They nod as you pass, their eyes distant, each carrying their own myth inside. Here's a little-known historical tidbit for this part of the journey. Dolphins weren't just symbols of Dionysus. In ancient Greece, they were believed to be sacred emissaries of the sea god Poseidon, and symbols of good luck, safe passage, and even reincarnation. Sailors carved them into ship hulls for protection, and when a dolphin swam beside your boat, that was no coincidence. That was a sign. You remember now, there was a moment, just after the pirates leaped into the sea, when time froze. Dionysus stood at the bow, his eyes wide open, drinking in the stars like wine. In that breathless pause, before the dolphins breached the waves, he turned to you. You see, he had said, sometimes people only become their best selves once they're thrown overboard. And then the splash, Dot, and the laughter, and the freedom. The debate still rages in quiet, dusty corners of academia. Was Dionysus a redeemer or a destroyer? Was the transformation into dolphins mercy or mockery? Some scholars argue that the pirates' fate was liberation, released from their cruelty, reborn into the natural world. Others insist it was punishment, poetic and humiliating. But none of them were on that ship. None of them smelled the wine mist or heard the ship groan with vines. You were, and now you understand. Maybe it was both. You rise again in your dream, walking barefoot through the vineyard that now stretches endlessly beyond the shipwreck. The grapes are plump, singing with potential, and the air is heavy with fermentation and secrets. You pluck one fruit from the vine and roll it between your fingers. It feels warm, alive. You bite down, and suddenly you're backed, truly backed by. The blanket shifts as you move, your eyes fluttering open just slightly to the dancing shadows on the wall. There's no music, no dolphins, just the breath of the night, slow and steady. You glance toward the small clay window and notice the tiniest shimmer on the Scylla puddle of salt water. No bigger than your thumb. You reach out, touch it, and bring your fingers to your lips. Salt and sweetness, like the sea and wine had a baby. Maybe the dream followed you home. You laugh under your breath, soft almost embarrassed. The old myths have a way of doing that, curling around you while you're vulnerable, burrowing into your skin like seeds. The next morning, you'll still be you, but just slightly tilted, slightly transformed. Just like the pirates, you might not leap into the sea or sprout fins, but you'll feel different, lighter, stranger, better. You sit up for a moment, stretching your arms to the cracked rafters above. The house groans with you. In solidarity, you stand and move toward the little jug of wine you keep on the counter, pouring a small splash into a chipped cup, not to get drunk, just a taste. You raise the cup to the dark room, to no one in particular. To change, you say softly, however it finds us. You sip. It's not the best vintage, but it'll do. And here's one more eccentric tidbit. In ancient Greek symposiums, essentially their version of dinner parties with more philosophy and significantly less small talk, there was a ritual called the crater libation. Before serious discussion or debauchery could begin, the host would pour out a small amount of wine to honor Dionysus. Not out of fear, out of respect. Even logic needed a little madness to stay whole. You put the cup down. The shadows have shifted again, longer now, stretching across the floor like the soft fingers of sleep, pulling you gently back down. You return to bed and close your eyes once more, this time more ready than ever. Outside, the wind picks up slightly, a low rustle, a sigh, and somewhere in the dark, a dolphin calls. Not loudly, just enough to remind you, you were there, you saw it. The morning hasn't come yet. Not really. There's that moment just before dawn when the world forgets whether it's still night or something else entirely. The stars are beginning to yawn and stretch across the sky, fading like chalk smudged by a lazy hand. The air feels heavier now, cooler, like a wool blanket has been draped across the hills. You lie still, eyes half closed, floating somewhere, between sleep and story, and somehow you're back on the sea again. But this time, the boat isn't cursed, and it's not growing vines. It's calm, steady, drifting under a pale pink sky that still holds a few fading stars. The sail creaks gently. The wood beneath your feet is sun-warmed. No laughter, no flutes, just a vast expanse of gentle waves and time. There's someone else at the helm. He's tall, olive-skinned, and wears a crown of ivy that's only half committed to staying on his head. You don't need to ask who he is. You've met him before. Back again, Dionysus says with a lazy smile. His voice is barely louder than the sea. You shrug. Sometimes it takes a few nights, he muses, adjusting the rudder without looking. Transformation isn't always a thunderbolt. You walk to the side of the boat and lean over. In the water, you see shapes beneath the surface, dolphins again, but they're just dolphins this time. No lingering shadows of pirates, no twisted redemption arcs, just smooth backs and playful tails gliding through the water. You smile. There's a kind of peace in this version, a story without drama, just drifting. Now, For one of our obligatory fun facts, did you know that in some fringe interpretations of the myth, Dionysus himself turns into a dolphin at the end, disappearing into the sea and riding alongside the men he transformed? It's not in the mainstream versions, but some vase paintings and local myths hint at it, almost like the god himself wanted to share in their new fate, just for the thrill of it. And scholars, oh, they have a field day with this metaphor for ego, death, some say, allegory for ecstatic unity with nature. Others insist. But you're here, and you don't need footnote. You just see a man, or a god, steering a boat full of stillness. As you watch the dolphins leap and spin through the water, you think back to the first time you heard this myth. Maybe it was in school, maybe whispered at a sleepover, or hidden in the margins of a dusty old book you were too young to understand. Back then, it was just a strange story, a weird punishment, another trickster god making trouble. But now, it feels like a reminder that people, like pirates, don't always know what they're doing. That laughter can turn to panic, and panic to wonder, and wonder to freedom. Dionysus chuckles beside you. They always focus on the punishment, he says, almost to himself, but they miss the freedom. You nod slowly. You get it now. In some parts of ancient Greece, there were tiny festivals dedicated only to this one tale, the dolphin transformation. Local fishermen would toss wreaths into the sea and call out to the dolphins, offering wine-soaked bread and honey as gifts. The dolphins would come, sometimes, maybe out of habit, maybe for the treats, or maybe just because the sea remembered. The breeze picks up, and the sail flutters like a lazy heartbeat. Dionysus stretches arms overhead, his body long and loose like a cat waking up in a sunbeam. We're close, he says. To what, you ask, though your voice is dream-soft. He grins. To the part where you wake up and don't quite know what changed, but everything feels a little softer. He steps off the boat, just like that, onto the sea. He doesn't sink. Of course he doesn't. He walks across the surface as if it's a polished marble floor, and the dolphins follow, arching beside him. Their laughter is laughter rippling across the water. You want to follow, but the boat is already gliding away, turning toward a new shoreline you hadn't noticed before. A village, familiar. Home. As the boat docks itself gently beside a crumbling jetty, you step off and feel dry land again beneath your toes. The village is still asleep, doors closed, lanterns out, chickens curled into themselves like feathery rocks. You tiptoe past the olive groves, past the shepherd's fig tree, past the tilted stone bench that now bears a smear of red wine, where someone maybe you once sat. And finally, back into your little house, where the floor remembers your creaks, where the shadows curl like cats on windowsills. You sit by the window and watch as dawn finally dares to arrive. Soft fingers of light stretch across the hills, brushing everything in peach and gold. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays, just a few notes, faint as a memory. One final curiosity before we drift away again. Dolphins were often considered guides to the afterlife in Greek lore. Psychopomps, some called them, like Hermes, but wetter. They weren't just cutesy creatures, they were bridges between one life and another, oneself and the next dot. And maybe that's what this myth has always been about. Not punishment, not madness, but passage, transformation, that the sea and its gentle monsters and gods who laugh. The morning is fully here now, but in the dream space where this story lives, time moves, slower, thicker, like honey being poured from a chilled spoon. And in this in-between light, something ancient settles over you, like a cloak, not heavy, just present. You stretch beneath the linen sheets, and your bones seem to hum with the echo of Dionysus' flute. Somewhere between your ears and your ribs, the story is still playing out, looping gently like ripples on the sea. No crash, no conclusion. Just the kind of ending that rolls softly into another beginning. You remember how it all began, not just Pack Tonight, but the myth itself. A stranger on a beach, pirates with bad judgment, a god who looked too human, too drunk, too ordinary, but who turned out to be everything they feared and more. Historians still debate whether the tale of Dionysus and the Tyrrhenian pirates was always meant to be metaphor, or whether it reflected a real folk memory of sea raids, kidnappings, and retribution cloaked in divine poetry. Some point to Mycenaean trade routes and strange dolphin-shaped motifs on pottery shards. Others argue that Dionysus, the god of transformation, simply needed a few stories to explain his volatile mercy. But here's what no one argues. The story stayed. From Hesiod to Homer to half-drunk symposiums, the dolphins swam on through every retelling. You get up now, slowly, quietly, and shuffle into your imagined kitchen. There's a clay cup on the counter empty now. You don't refill it, just hold it. The cool surface feels real enough to ground you. Outside. The world is waking. Roosters start their bragging early in these parts, and a single cart rumbles down the road, the wheels creaking, a tune older than most of the temples still standing. And speaking of temples, did you know there was once a small island shrine in the Cyclades, dedicated entirely to dolphin-formed Dionysus, not to his wild, wine-fueled parties or ivy-covered staff? Just that moment of calm of animal grace when the sea bore witness to his softer side. Most tourists never found it. Most maps forgot it. But the locals knew. They still leave offerings there. Slices of fig, a little honey, sometimes a stone, carved with a wave. As the day builds around you, children shouting, laundry flapping, goats resuming their campaign of global disruption. You hold onto something small and shimmering inside. A bit of myth stuck in your teeth. A bit of dolphin still left in your spine. You've changed. Maybe not enough for anyone else to notice. But that's not their business anyway. You notice, you always will. Because now, you understand why Dionysus never punished them with fire or thunder or snakes. He gave them freedom. and a body that finally moved with the tide, instead of against it. He made them part of the world they took for granted, and in doing so, he reminded them, youth, that sometimes punishment is just a story word for second chances wearing a new face. And now, finally, we slow down. We ease out of the tale, as gently as a boat returning to harbor after a long drift. You lie back once more, body completely still, like a leaf resting on calm water. The sounds around you soften the whir of the fan, the occasional creak of furniture settling, the slow, even rhythm of your own breath. Your hands relax, your jaw unclenches. The dolphins swim a little further out now, fading into the horizon. No need to follow. You've seen enough for one night. There's a hush that settles in the corners of the room. It's not silence exactly, it's more like permission. Permission to let go of your day, of your thoughts, of your need to make sense of everything. Let it all dissolve. Let your heartbeat take on the rhythm of waves against wood. Let your body feel as weightless as wine poured into a waiting cup somewhere far off. A flute plays one final note, not loud, just enough, and you drift now, fully, finally, completely into sleep. Let's linger here just a little longer. The tale has ended, but your mind is still humming with the sea breeze, and your limbs feel like they've been washed smooth by ancient salt water. No need to move. Just let the softness stretch across your body like warm light seeping through a dusty window. There's no hurry. If you listen closely, you can still hear the ocean, not crashing or roaring, but murmuring, like it's telling its own bedtime story. Too slow for words, too deep for dreams. Your breath becomes slower, quieter. Each inhale feels like you're drawing in mist. Each exhale, a whisper back to the waves. You might remember the feel of grapevines wrapping round your arms, or the cool splash of dolphin skin brushing past your fingers. But even those details begin to blur now, like footsteps in sand being gently erased by tide. There's nothing left to chase, nothing left to solve, only stillness. Let your eyelids grow heavier. Let your thoughts melt into the rhythm of your breath. Tonight, you've journeyed through myth and memory, across time and sea, and now you're safe, wrapped in the quiet, held by the dark, resting in the gentle lull between stories. Sleep well, dream softly. When you wake, may something in you feel just a little lighter, just a little more free.